Hello, hi everyone. Sorry I'm a little bit late. We've got some challenges here with the internet and the beach being locked down and all kinds of things. So here we are, day 4, how we can use NLP and timeline therapy, mental emotional release, and Huna to enable us to maintain our mental and emotional and physiological well-being. I've had a few things happening over the last 24 hours since last time I spoke to you. My flights home were cancelled, and so I had no idea how I was going to get back. I couldn't get a hold of British Airways to rearrange my flights or any of those kind of things. And it really reminded me of an important piece, which really is the next thing that we want to talk about, which is the importance of focusing on what you want. Anxiety and fear and panic can only happen if you're actually focusing on what you don't want rather than what you do want. And the media doesn't want us to do that. I was consulting with the ultimate oracle of truth this morning, the Daily Mail, to see what was going on at home and in the world in general. And, a number of people have criticized me for looking at the Daily Mail, but the reason why I do that is that it's that dailymail.com is the one of the most visited websites on the planet. It's around, I think they have something like 98 million unique visitors per day. So if you want to know what the majority of people are thinking about, look at the Daily Mail. It's all doom and gloom, all manner of kind of things that are not good, which is what causes people to experience anxiety and fear, and ultimately panic. So what I want to talk to you about today is about focusing on what we want. That's something I needed to do yesterday, and at around about 2:00 this morning, I finally managed to get through to British Airways and rearrange my flights coming home. So now I know I'm getting home. But for a while, I caught myself, even though I've been doing this stuff, NLP and hypnosis, timeline therapy, MER, Huna, for 27 years now. I caught myself going like, what am I going to do? So, and it reminded me a little bit of my grandma Shepherd. My grandma died, I think she was about 91 years old. She died in 1992, I think. And she never knew anything about NLP or hypnosis or timeline therapy or mental emotional release or Huna. But, if you sat down and you talked to her about her life, she would be okay, but you'd probably be in tears. She was born in the early 1900s, and she had a sister. Her and a sister were playing out in the fields in Warsaw, north of Mansfield in Nottinghamshire, and her sister cut her knee and got blood poisoning and died within a matter of days. That's what happened in the early 1900s. She lived through 2 world wars where male family members, friends went away and didn't come back. She never learned to drive, so she walked everywhere. And there was a certain point where every winter Grandma broke something. She broke her arm, she broke her elbow, she broke her collarbone, she broke her hip. And it got to the point where we go like, I wonder what Grandma's going to break this year. But she never complained or moaned about anything, much to my annoyance, actually. At a certain point, I think it's probably like my teens, where I got to the point where, I got my first job, my first Saturday job, got my first girlfriend, whatever. And like everybody, you get problems with those kind of things. And I'd speak to my grandma on the telephone every week. And, she would say, how's it going? And I go like, oh, Grandma, I've got this problem at work, or I've got this problem with my girlfriend, whatever. And my grandma would say, oh, well, soon be the end of the week. And I go, Grandma, it's Monday. And she'd go, yep, that's what I mean. Soon be the end of the week. And it used to really annoy me. But the thing was that now, understanding the way that the human mind works, no matter what was going on, for my grandma, whether she was like broken arm, broken hip, whatever, her focus was always on when whatever that was going on that she didn't want was resolved and was sorted out. Hence, that soon be the end of the week. And we can actually do that now, and we can actually do it in a structured way with the techniques, particularly in timeline therapy and mental emotional release, which are around dealing with anxiety. So anxiety, in a way, is a warning from your unconscious mind that you're not paying attention to what you want. You're paying attention to what you don't want. And the way our mind and the way our neurology is wired is our nervous system is the most wonderful device to create in our experience, create in our world, if you like, what we focus on. I don't know if any of you have ever done an advanced driving course where you go on a skid pan. If you haven't, I'll explain it. Basically, you're on this thing called a skid pan. It's a concrete area. They spray water on it, and the driving instructor has a button that when they press this button, it will put the car into a skid. Now, technically, at that point in time, the car is out of control. Strangely, the car will, out of control, skid towards whatever the driver is actually focusing on. So if there's a tree there and the driver goes, I don't want to hit that tree, and they pay attention to the tree, this out of controlled car skids towards the tree. So what the driving instructor does is retrain your mind to focus on where you do want to go. So if there's two trees and the car's in a skid, and the driver focuses on the space, the gap between the trees, this out of control car will actually skid between the two trees. And I was talking about this with one of my private clients, who's a helicopter pilot. And he said, we have exactly the same training in when you learn to fly a helicopter, because technically a helicopter is permanently unstable. And in the old days of flying the helicopter before, electronic fly-by-wire, flying the helicopter with the joystick was called stirring the pudding. What you had to do is continually stir the joystick around like this to maintain the helicopter in this permanently unstable position. He said essentially the helicopter will fly wherever the pilot puts their attention. So, if you look at you're flying between two buildings, and the pilot goes like, I don't want to hit that building, then the helicopter will actually fly towards the building. What you've got to do is focus on the gap. So really important for our own mental, emotional, and physiological well-being at this point in time is to focus on the gap, whereas the media want you to focus on the building, if you like. Just an interesting thing from consulting with the Oracle of the Daily Mail this morning. I see that we're going to be doing testing of 500,000 people compared to literally tens of thousands of people. There will be something that happens as a result of that, is that the number of people who are infected with the coronavirus will appear statistically to go through the roof. It hasn't actually changed. What's changed is the number of people that have been tested. I saw this in the late 1980s with AIDS, and it all happened within a week. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, had two particular diseases that if somebody died of those two diseases, it was taken as being AIDS-related death or AIDS-related disease. But in the space of a week, what they did was they recategorized it and said that there were 98 diseases that were AIDS-related. which meant that, statistically, if you change the set size from 2 to 98, the graph will go like, whoa, exponential, to the point where, in the late 1980s, I remember in all the newspapers, it's saying, there's been this exponential increase in the number of people who are infected with AIDS. You can't get infected with AIDS because it's a syndrome. It doesn't actually exist. And they said, if it continues going this way, it will wipe out the entire population within a matter of weeks. But there wasn't an increase. It was a change in the measurement and the statistics. And the same thing's going to happen. I'm telling you this now. The same thing's going to happen within the next few weeks in the UK because of the dramatically increased number of people who are being tested for the coronavirus. Yeah. But the media will say it's on an exponential scale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not actually the case. Anyway, let's get down to our technique for today. So your unconscious mind organizes all of your memories, and it organizes your memories of the past, and it organizes your memories of the future, and it organizes them in something called a timeline. So if I was to ask you what you did this time last week, or this time last month, or this time last year, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, you would know where that memory was. But equally, if I was going to ask you, what you're going to do tomorrow, what you're going to do in a week's time, what you're going to do in a year's time, what are you going to do in 5 years' time, what are you going to do in 10 years' time, you would also have a memory for the future. Most people think that we only have memories of the past, but our unconscious mind actually structures memories of the past and the future in a timeline. So I have an idea that if I asked your unconscious mind where your past is and where your future is, you might say that it's from front to back, or left to right, or up to down, or in some relationship with your body. And it's not your conscious mind's idea as to where your past or your future is, it's your unconscious. So if I was to ask your unconscious mind in which direction is your past, which direction would you point? That's right. And if I was to ask your unconscious mind in which direction is your future, which direction would you point? Now, when you consider those directions that you pointed in for the past and the future, do you notice that it suggests a line or some kind of continuum from the distant past to the distant future, with the present being somewhere in between those two things? Yeah, that's great. Now, that's your timeline. Now, the next thing I want you to think about is, how would you know? What's the very last thing that would have to happen in the future for you to know that everything was okay? Everything with the coronavirus was concluded, was resolved, and I'm not saying that that the old service will ever be resumed. We're going to have to get used to a new normal. But what would be the very last thing that had to happen for you to know that you and everyone that you love and everyone that you care for were okay? A little bit like my grandma's, oh, well, soon be the end of the week. What would be the very last thing that had to happen for you to know that it was all over? And as you think about that, whereabouts in time is it? Is it a month in the future, or 6 months in the future, or a year in the future? So now, just bring to mind the directions that you pointed to for the past and the future, your timeline. And then just using the faculty of your imagination, if you find it easiest to do this with your eyes closed, then go ahead and close your eyes. And what I want you to do is to float above that timeline. Float above now. As you're floating above now, just notice how good it feels to be above all of that. And also how good it feels to know that in actual fact you are completely in control of the way that you represent your past and the future. And then again, just using your faculty of your wonderful imagination, just imagine floating out over the future, way out over the future, way out over the future, and float out to 15 minutes after that event that would have you know that everything was okay. 15 minutes after that very final thing, that very last thing, it would have to happen for you to know that you, everyone you love, and everyone you care for is okay. And the world is okay. And when you're there at 15 minutes after that event, turn around and look towards now along the timeline. And then ask yourself, now, where's the anxiety? That's right. It disappeared. Because 15 minutes after all of this is finished, 15 minutes after all of this is done, you'd be relaxed. You'd be You'd be calm, balanced, and centered. And then what you can do is float back over your timeline, above this place in time we call now, where the future becomes the past. Float back down into now. And let's just do 4 hard breaths together to bring us back into the now fully. Deep breath into the nose. One more. And back into now, back into the present. So there we go. That's our video for today. I trust that's been useful for you. Thank you for all of the comments, gratitude. I love doing this. The techniques that we have of NLP and hypnosis, timeline therapy, mental emotional release, and Huna are just so powerful for enabling people to take control and to master their own life and create what they want. In times of great adversity and uncertainty, where a lot of people are understandably anxious and afraid and even panicking, these techniques really, really, really work. And my purpose in my life is to share those things with as many people as possible, to educate people that you can change things. You can master and control your life. So thank you for the kind words of gratitude. And I'm on purpose. I'm doing what I love doing. So again, it's aloha from Hawaii, and also as I've said before, I love you all, and ahui ho. I'll see you tomorrow.